it's Eric. In today's video, I'm going to be answering some frequently asked questions about wearing your ostomy bag sideways. Stay tuned. So I guess the first question would really be, why would you want to wear your ostomy bag sideways? For me, I find that wearing my bag horizontally just feels better. I mean, it's out of the way. It generally feels better supported, and you know, overall, to me, it just feels better than having it dangling down. Now, it may not be for everyone, and hopefully in this video I'll answer some of the questions that most people would ask, but it's certainly something to look into. I know when I first started looking at things regarding ostomies before my surgery, I was actually a little surprised that people were wearing their bags horizontally, but you know, don't knock it till you try it. Okay, so how exactly do you wear your bag sideways? So the first component is obviously to apply your wafer and bag so that it's already facing sideways. Now, this is easier to do on some appliances. So for example, when I'm using Coloplast products, Coloplast two-piece products, you can actually freely rotate that without having to really worry so much. It's not as easy with Hollister or Convatec or other brands out there that use two-piece appliances, because they generally, you'd have to usually remove the bag, turn it, snap it back on for those to work. But Coloplast, it's pretty easy. But for the most part, I'm going to apply my bag sideways, and then I would wear some type of support garment. So most people have probably heard about a product called the Stealth Belt. I'm actually wearing a product called the Comfort Belt, which is very similar. And there are other similar support products out there. But what that does is it helps to keep everything secure. A lot of these different support bands will be adjustable. A lot of them will have a special zipper or pocket on the bottom that you can actually take your bag out of, empty, and then you don't have to actually remove the whole belt. So there's actually a couple of different designs like that. I find them to be super, super comfortable. They're great when you're doing a lot of physical activity. They're great if you're doing a lot of activity that requires movement and things like that. So that's basically the second part of that. Now, because of this support band and because of the bag being sideways, it does free up a lot of space underneath. So I find that my clothing options are often expanded when I'm wearing my appliance horizontally. So as an example, I'm able to tuck my shirt into my pants without any trouble. I'm able to do things like that that would normally be a little challenging for me when I'm not wearing my bag horizontally. For some people, for example, that might rely on a stoma guard in order for them to wear their shirt tucked into their pants. That's no longer an issue. So for me, it enhances, and I can't see situations where it would reduce any of my clothing options. Now, another common question someone might ask might be whether or not wearing your bag horizontally will restrict your output. Now, that's a very logical question to ask, because usually when your bag is vertically, your output falls out and it drops down to the bottom, and there's really no issues with that. But because you're using a support band, because the positioning of your bag isn't quite the same, there may be some concerns about that. So my answer to that is maybe. It might actually restrict your output flow, and a lot of that depends on whether or not your stoma has difficulty when there's any kind of pressure or clothing over that. And that might be something you experience even with an ostomy wrap or other garments. So if, for example, you're used to wearing ostomy wraps, if you find that that often creates issues where you're getting a lot of pancaking, or you're constantly having to adjust it because of a flow issue, then it's probably going to happen when you're wearing a support band as you have your appliance horizontally. So that might be something to consider. Now, another question someone might ask is, will it clog my filter faster? Because obviously, because the stool isn't dropping down to the side and it kind of sits more in that area, it will be in contact with your filter more often, and I would say that it's probably guaranteed that your filter will be clogging at least faster than it would normally. So that would actually be probably one of the only reasons why I would shy away from wearing my bag horizontally. But for the most part, if you find a good filter that works for you, you're probably not going to have too many issues. Now, that does come with a caveat. Some bags have really crappy filters, and those filters tend to leak like right through the filter. If you happen to be wearing an appliance like that that would normally leak on you through the filter, I would suggest not wearing it horizontally, or go with an option, or go with the same appliance option without the filter on there, and that will essentially eliminate that risk. Now, obviously, you won't be able to take advantage of the fact that the filter is no longer there, so you won't be degassing and stuff like that, but it's certainly not going to create any leaks or anything like that for you. Now, speaking of leaks, another question someone might ask is, will this increase the chance of me having a leak? Now, for the most part, I honestly find that I get a better seal around my stoma, and I think that's because there's more pressure. There's like a constant pressure from the band, so it's always putting a bit of extra support there. And also the fact that my bag isn't pulling anymore, especially as it gets full. It's not pulling, and it's not creating extra pressure or anything like that on the appliance. I find that leaks really, I can't even think of a time where I've leaked with the support band on. So no, I would have to say leaks aren't very common. It certainly won't increase leaks when you have something like this on. Now, another question someone might ask is whether or not it will restrict their movement. Like, will I be able to still bend? Will I be able to do things like that? I personally find that it makes bending easier. Tying my shoes, for example, I find it to be easier. Doing any kind of physical activities, I find it to be easier. So that's not a concern at all for me when I'm wearing my bag horizontally. Now, another common question someone might ask is whether or not you can wear a one-piece, or does it have to be a two-piece when you're wearing it like this? The answer is you can wear whatever you want. I find that the one-pieces give a lower profile, which might be particularly handy when you're wearing a support band like this, because you do want to have a little less of that bulk. So one piece works out great. Two pieces work out, personally for me, they work out even better. And the main reason for that is on a two-piece, I'm still able to burp my appliance. That is, I can release gas from the coupling where the bag meets the wafer, and there's no issue with that. And I can do that, while the band is still on, and I don't have to remove it or anything like that. Now, another good question somebody had brought up, or another good point somebody had brought up is, I already wear an appliance that has a feature where I could just fold it so it, kind of keeps compact and all that. And that's actually a really good point. Some appliances, I know the Coloplast Mios, for example, they actually have a feature in there where you can fold up the bag and make it more compact. But there are a couple of points that I do want to bring up that wearing your bag horizontally will provide additional benefits for. So A, you don't have to worry about how full your appliance is when you're wearing it like this. I know with those bags that can fold, as the bag fills up, that kind of doesn't work anymore. It opens up, and then it becomes just a full dangling bag. So that is obviously not going to be a benefit to you. Another thing is you don't get the same support wearing one of those appliances as you would when you're wearing one of these support bands and having your bag horizontally. Another thing I notice with those pouches that can fold in half is that they end up creating more of a bulk or bulge underneath my clothing, because it essentially doubles the thickness of that appliance. Whereas with an accessory belt, I find that it flattens out the profile. It makes things less noticeable under clothing. Now, someone brought up a really good point. Now, this isn't a very common thing, but some people do have two stomas. So they'll have one on the left side, one on the right side. And, how the heck am I supposed to do that, when I've got two? Now, some companies, as a matter of fact, a lot of these companies that make these special support bands, they'll actually accommodate double stomas. I know for sure Stealth Belt does have a double stoma option, so that won't be a concern for you. You can still wear both bags horizontally, and there's no issue there. Now, pancaking is another concern. So for those who don't know, pancaking is traditionally used to describe when your output just stays kind of stuck near the top of your bag, and it's kind of hanging around your stoma, and it's not actually dropping down. So the question is whether or not wearing your bag horizontally will increase the chance of pancaking. And I would probably have to say yes, it does if you have thicker output. And the way I usually deal with it is, if I can feel, that my stoma is being active, I'll try to push that output to the side, which would then be the bottom of the bag, and that usually deals with it fine. If I do end up having, issues with pancaking and stuff like that, I'll try to mitigate it in other ways. So for example, I might increase my fluid intake, or when I'm emptying my bag, I might use a bit of water in there to kind of clean up around that area a little easier. And it's usually not a big problem. If you have pancaking issues to begin with, it's probably going to be a little more exaggerated when you're wearing this type of appliance, but that's not to say that the appliance itself will create a pancaking issue. Now, one of the most common questions, and this is definitely a biggie, is it difficult to empty your bag when it's sideways? Now, I would have to say it depends on your style when you empty your bag. So if you're sitting down in the toilet and you empty your bag straight down in between your legs, then it might be a little awkward because the outlet is pointing out, like to the side, so you're going to have to bring that straight down. So that might require a bit of handiwork. For me personally, because I kneel when I empty my bag, I actually find the angle that the pouch is in when it's horizontally to be exactly where I want it to be. And I find it to be very easy that way. It's never been messy. It's never been a complication by emptying it like that. And the real beauty of it is when you're wearing it horizontally, you can just, after you've emptied your bag, you can just put it right back in the support band and you're good to go. It's not really a fuss. Now, one of the things that I feel the support band and wearing your pouch horizontally really helps with is during intimacy. So I know for a lot of people who traditionally wear ostomy wraps and things like that, during sex, it can still be a little cumbersome. It can still be a bit bulky. But when you're wearing your bag horizontally, I find that it just eliminates any issues. You don't get anything kind of interfering with the action. You don't have any problems like that. It keeps the profile nice and low. It keeps things nice and secure. So I find there's way more advantages by wearing my appliance like this than having to wear something like an ostomy wrap. Now, what about roller coasters? What about sports? What about doing all kinds of activities like that? I'm a big roller coaster fan. I've been on hundreds of different rides in the last few years, and I personally really, really like having my bag sideways when I'm going on these rides. For the most part, it creates enough of a gap where I can, easily put on a seatbelt or a harness without it getting in the way. It's nearly eliminated my need to have stoma guards when I go on rides. I've also been kayaking. I've also done go-karting and all kinds of stuff wearing my bag horizontally, and it's really never ever been an issue for me. So it's, again, I'd highly recommend that. Now, I'm gonna repeat this, but this might not be for everyone. There's definitely a little bit of a learning curve, and to some people, they may not just be very comfortable with it. If you have a very high output stoma, I probably wouldn't recommend going this way. I think you're going to have a lot more challenges when you're constantly having to empty your bag. But if you've got like a colostomy or an ileostomy that is relatively easy to manage, I would say at least give it a try. Now, a lot of these accessory bands and support bands, they tend to be quite expensive. So if you happen to have an ostomy wrap already, you can kind of simulate the same effect by putting your bag horizontally and then using that wrap as support. And that'll give you some idea of what to expect. But, the support bands that are designed for this are way, way, way more comfortable. They are often adjustable using Velcro or some other method. And, they're so nice to use and wear. Now, in the summer months, some people might find that wearing that accessory band might create a little more sweating, make things a little hotter for them. I find the best way for me to deal with those is to just put a light dusting of baby powder underneath the belt, and then that way it stays dry, and I find that works extremely well for me. Another benefit to that is it might actually help to take the moisture off your skin and help to evaporate that quickly. Now, that will depend on the materials used for the particular support band, but that might be a positive for you. Now, in the winter months, having that band there, for me, it just makes me a little warmer. It's like another layer of clothing right around that area. So it makes things more comfortable for me. So those are some of the frequently asked questions. There's more in the article that I've linked in the description below, but if you've got any other questions about wearing an ostomy bag horizontally, leave them in the comments. I'd love to know, and hopefully I can address that in a future video. Until next time, have a good one.